I wasn't supposed to be outside that night. My family was just 5 minutes away by car. But for me, on foot, it felt like an eternity. The moment I finally saw someone on the road ahead, I felt this wave of relief. That relief turned to ice in my veins. When I realized they weren't standing, this story takes place when I was 13. It was a summer vacation that, even now, I think about way more than I probably should. My grandmother lived deep in the countryside, the kind of place you only see in movies. To get to a house, you had to turn off the main road and drive down this long single-lane dirt path. It was completely surrounded by rice fields on one side and a dense forest on the other. No street lights, no houses, nothing. Just pure, suffocating darkness and the constant buzz of insects. That afternoon, my mother and I went to visit her. My youngest uncle lived there too, and he had the one thing I desperately wanted: a powerful gaming computer. As soon as I confirmed he was at work, I locked myself in his room and dived into hours of games. I was in my element. Around 7 p.m. my grandmother rounded everyone up. My aunt, and herself too. Go grocery shopping with my uncle. I stayed behind, honestly thrilled to have the whole house to myself for a while. By the time my uncle finally called me, it was pitch black outside. He told me one of the front tires had blown out right after they turned onto that dirt road. The spare tire, he said, was in the storage shed behind the house. He asked if I could bring it to him. My heart sank. I knew that road. Walking it at night wasn't like a stroll through a suburban neighborhood. It's a 5-minute drive. But on foot, it's a 20, maybe 30-minute trek through nothingness. Just rice fields and dark, silent trees. But I was 13. I didn't want to sound like a scared kid. So I grabbed the heavy spare tire and started walking. I could see my uncle's car headlights far in the distance, just a dim, yellow dots floating in the black void. Knowing my family was at the other end of this journey helped, but only a little. As my eyes slowly adjusted to the dark, the landscape started to play tricks on me. I'd see these tall, thin figures standing in the rice fields, but they'd vanish the moment I tried to focus on them. Shadows that felt way too solid would flicker at the edge of my vision. My heart started pounding against my ribs, and I had to physically force myself not to break into a dead sprint. I was about 20 minutes into the walk when I saw it, a dark shape, right in the middle of the road ahead. I immediately slowed down, my steps becoming cautious. At first, I thought it was just a sack of something that fell off a truck, or maybe some debris. But as I got closer, the shape became clearer. It was a person, an old woman. She was squatting low to the ground, facing the rice field, completely motionless. Her mouth was open, hoosed slightly like she was frozen in the middle of taking a breath. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I didn't want to just walk past her without saying anything. "Excuse me," I called out, my voice trembling. "Are you okay?" There was no response. Just silence. I tried again, louder this time. Slowly her head began to turn toward me. Even in the dim light, I could see her face. Her hair was thin and white, curled tightly against her scalp. Her skin was a canvas of deep wrinkles and strange, dark stains. Her mouth remained open, but her eyes, I could only see the whites. They were wide and blank. Then, she started to turn the rest of her body toward me on that S. When I realized something was horribly wrong, she didn't have any legs. Her entire torso was just resting directly on the dirt, propped up only by her arms. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. Every single instinct I had was screaming at me to run, but my feet were glued to the ground. She started to pull herself toward me, her arms dragging her limbless body across the dirt. I dropped the tire. The loud thud broke my trance, and I ran. I ran faster than I ever have in my life. I don't remember much after that. Everything just went black. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in my grandmother's spare room, and the morning sun was streaming through the window. My mother told me they saw me sprinting toward the car with the tire, my head down, before I just collapsed into the ditch beside the road. They assumed I had fainted from exhaustion or the heat. When I finally found the courage to tell them what I saw, they just laughed, nervously. They blamed it on my overactive imagination and all the horror games I'd been playing. To this day, I still don't know what I saw that night. But I know one thing for sure. That dirt road was paved years ago, and I have never, ever walked it again after dark. My name is Daniel, and I work nights as a hospital supply runner. It's a lonely job, but a simple one. I don't move patients or deal with families. I just transport sealed medical equipment, organ containers, and lab materials between hospitals after midnight. It's the kind of job where you learn to trust checklists and routines, because routine is the only thing keeping you sane when the roads are empty and the world is asleep. Most nights, the scariest thing I face is boredom. That all changed one night last March. I was dispatched just after 1 in the morning. The job was to move a sealed refrigeration unit from a small regional hospital to a major trauma center about 90 minutes away. The paperwork was already flagged urgent, which gets your attention. But there was something else odd about it. No item description. Just a barcode, a temperature range, and a single, handwritten note scribbled in red ink. Do not open under any circumstances. Now, that wasn't totally unheard of, but it definitely felt strange. I scanned the unit, loaded it into the cargo bay, and sealed the doors. It hummed quietly, maintaining its temperature. Everything checked out. I was on the road at 1:42 a.m. My GPS suddenly rerouted me. It said there was construction up ahead on the highway. That's when things started to feel really wrong. The detour took me down a narrow, winding road cutting through dense woods. No houses, no streetlights, and, of course, no cell signal. It was the kind of road that feels like it shouldn't even exist, unless you're already lost. Then, the temperature in the cab just dropped. I don't mean it got a little cooler, I mean it plunged. Instantly, I could see my own breath fogging up in front of my face. I checked the dashboard, but there were no warnings. The heater was still blasting on high. That's when I heard it. A slow, uneven sound. It sounded like dot 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 breathing. And it was coming from the cargo area, right behind my head. I quickly turned down the radio, my heart starting to pound. The sound stopped. I tried to rationalize it, telling myself it was just the refrigeration unit cycling. But then it started again, closer this time, a wet, labored sound, like someone was trying to breathe without being heard. Without even thinking, I spoke out loud to the empty van. Is something wrong back there? The breathing paused, and then something tapped once on the metal wall separating the cargo bay from the cab. It wasn't a knock, it was a test. My pulse was thundering in my ears. I frantically checked the live cargo monitor on my dash. Temperature steady. Seal intact. No movement alerts. Everything was normal. And yet, the tapping came again. 3 distinct taps. Slow, deliberate. Then a voice whispered right through the metal. You're not supposed to be alone. It wasn't a monstrous voice. It wasn't distorted. It sounded perfectly human, just exhausted. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the radio as I tried to call dispatch. Nothing but static. My GPS screen froze, then recalculated the route. It showed the same road, the same dark stretch, over and over again. I floored the accelerator, but the van didn't respond. Instead, the speedometer started to drop on its own. 40, 30, 20. From behind me, the voice spoke again, sounding even closer now. They'll know if you hurry. I slammed my foot on the brakes. The van skidded to a stop in the middle of the road, and then, complete silence. No breathing, no tapping. A moment later, the heater kicked back on with a whoosh of warm air. The GPS snapped back to normal, showing the correct route. I sat there for a full minute, frozen, before I could force myself to drive again. I didn't stop until I pulled into the trauma center's loading bay. Security helped me unload the refrigeration unit. I watched them like a hawk as they scanned it. No damage. No tampering. No alerts. Everything was fine. But then one of the technicians frowned at the barcode. This was supposed to be transferred 3 days ago, he said, looking at me. Why wasn't it? I just shook my head. Primera de no idea. The tech hesitated for a second, then lowered his voice. Because the donor, he never stabilized. A chill went through me that had nothing to do with the night air. Before leaving, I tried to act casual and asked a passing nurse if these refrigeration units ever make strange sounds, like breathing. She just stared at me blankly. "No," she said, "but sometimes people do when they're sedated too early." I forced a laugh, pretended it was a stupid question, and went home. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next night, before starting my shift, I did a routine inspection of the van. That's when I saw it, on the inside of the metal cargo partition. Condensation, in the perfect shape of a face. Its mouth was open, like it had been breathing against the metal from the other side. Now, when I drive at night, I keep my speed steady. I never rush. I never slow down suddenly, because sometimes, when the road is empty and the world is quiet, the heater turns off. The speedometer drops, and something behind me exhales softly and whispers. "Good, they can't track us if we stay calm." When I was 16, my dad told me the basement apartment would only be for a few months. That's what adults say when they don't want to admit they running out of options. We had just moved to a quiet suburb outside Minneapolis after my parents' divorce. The rent was cheap. The landlord didn't ask many questions, and the apartment was technically finished, which meant concrete walls, a low ceiling, and one narrow bedroom at the end of a short hallway. The first thing my dad said after we moved in really stuck with me. "Don't block the utility door," he said, pointing to a small metal door set into the wall near the laundry area. Landlord said maintenance might need access. T-door deeden. T look important. It was waist high, painted the same off-white as the wall. Wheat no handle, just a small recessed latch. I didn't think about it again. The first night I woke up to knocking. Not loud, not urgent. Just 3 slow taps. Tap, tap, tap. I checked my phone, 1:42 in the morning. I assumed it was the pipes. Old building, old sounds. That's what everyone says, but then it happened again. Tap. Tap. Same rhythm, same spacing. It wasn't coming from the walls. It was coming from the floor. Directly beneath my bed. I sat up and listened. The knocking stopped immediately, like it was waiting to see if I'd react. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, Brometta told my dad. He frowned but shrugged it off. "Probably heating pipes," he said. "Basements echo weird." I wanted to believe him, but the knocking came back the next night. And the next. Always 3 taps. Always beneath my bed. Always stopping the moment I moved. By the 4th night, I decided to try something. When the knocking started, Primera tap it back. 3 taps, using my knuckles against the floor. The response came instantly. 3 taps, but harder this time. My chest went cold. I didn't knock again. A few days later, things started changing. Small things at first. My shoes were never where I left them. The bathroom trash would be emptied when no one had touched it. Once, I found muddy fingerprints on the side of the washing machine. Thin fingers dragged downward like someone had lost their balance. My dad said it was probably us just not noticing. Then one evening, I came home from school and found the utility door open. Just a crack. I asked my dad about it. He swore he hadn't touched it. That night, the knocking changed. It moved. Instead of coming from beneath my bed, it came from the wall right behind my head. Tap, 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 tap. Then, for the first time, I heard breathing. Slow, controlled, close. I froze, staring at the wall, listening to someone or something breathe through the thin concrete. Then a voice whispered, barely louder than the hum of the heater. "You hear me now. Primera, escrea, myth." My dad tore into the room, flipped on the lights, and searched the apartment. There was nothing. No one. The utility door was closed again. We didn't sleep that night. The next morning, my dad called the landlord. This time, he answered. There was a long pause when my dad mentioned the knocking. Then the landlord said something I'll never forget. That door isn't supposed to open from your side. The police came later that afternoon. They opened the utility door. Behind it was a narrow service crawlspace running beneath the entire building. It wasn't listed on the apartment plans. It wasn't finished. Just dirt, insulation, and darkness. They found food wrappers, empty water bottles, a blanket pressed flat against the concrete like someone had been sleeping there for a long time. And directly beneath my bedroom, 3 shallow dents in the concrete ceiling. Tap, tap, tap. They never found anyone. The landlord claimed ignorance. The building inspector shut the apartment down a week later. We moved out that same night. Years have passed since then. I live in a new place now, on an upper floor, with solid locks and no basements. But sometimes, late at night, when the floor beneath me creaks in my current apartment, my stomach still tightens, because I know the difference now. Old buildings make noise, but something knocking back isn't just noise. Isn't just noise.